Yo. Welcome back to Son of a Preacher Man. As always, I'm your host. Soapman is in the house. Okay, so a few episodes ago, I went all the way back to the beginning of the Bible, and I just started explaining things. I honed in on the first 3 words, in the beginning. I highlighted the fact that there were a few things already in existence in the beginning. The Bible says that there was darkness, the face of the deep, and the face of the waters. And I have those 3 things highlighted in big, bold, red print here for you. I further honed in on the face of the waters. I told you that it was a huge clue and that it was key to my understanding of what Moses is describing in the creation story, or rather in the first verse of Genesis. So look, Moses grew up in Egypt. He was raised in all the traditions befitting a noble Egyptian household. He had been educated and was very aware of the many various versions of the creation story. And they all start out the same way. The Babylonians called it the noon. The Egyptians called it the sea of chaos. But Moses calls it the face of the waters. But folks, they're all talking about the same thing. In my last episode, I told you that what Moses was describing, he and the ancient historians, what they were describing at the beginning of their various creation stories was a black hole. Okay, so we obviously need to talk about black holes. What exactly are they? Why they exist? Stuff like that. We need to talk about their functions, their structures, what they consist of, and a few key characteristics. Now, for a long time, people didn't even believe that black holes existed. They were the subject of science fiction and comic books. I think Albert Einstein might have been the first to theorize that they actually existed, but I could be wrong about that. Fast forward to 2019, and we had our first photograph of a real black hole. Okay, so they're real, and we know they're real. Deep in our galaxy and deep in the bowels of near and distant galaxies as well, black holes exist. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, I originally had this whole presentation on the science behind black holes, and it gets pretty complicated and confusing and sophisticated, and I doubt that you are interested in that anyway. But I think it's important to understand everything, how black holes form from these super massive stars that collapse, and the gravity involved in it, and it helps you kind of understand what you're dealing with when this eventually turns into a black hole. But I'm already getting twisted and stumbling over my words, so we won't go into the science of it. I'll only explain exactly what it is you need to know. We'll just touch on the bare minimum, just some basics, okay? So black holes, as I just stated, are made as a result of the death and collapse of giant stars, just to put it plainly.
Black holes, massive, mysterious, and terrifying.
Okay, so it's kind of like just what the guy said. A black hole is like a place in space, an area in which time and space become so warped, it's beyond really any of our understanding. We can't really quite calculate what goes on inside of a black hole because we've never been there. So most of it is just theory and conjecture. Now, a black hole can either be solo or it can come in pairs. The truth is, we don't really know exactly how many black holes are out there. Now, when you have more than one black hole in a given vicinity or in proximity to one another, they will either get along or they will not. Black holes are perfectly capable of coexisting with one another. In many instances, they have and have for a very long time. Now, when black holes play nice and get along, they will orbit one another, never coming into contact with one another, never disturbing or interrupting each other's orbits, coexisting in perfect harmony. In some cases, pairs of black holes may even hold a mutually beneficial symbiotic relationship. But in other cases, black holes are on a trajectory in which they are destined to collide. Have you ever heard the expression, what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? Well, yeah, it's kind of like that. What I'm trying to say is, when something like black holes collide, it is a destructive force of such severity that it's almost like space was designed to contain those types of events, for lack of a better word. It's good to get an understanding of these things, the scale of these things in existence, the reality of their existence, and an understanding of the roles that these phenomenons play in life and how they have shaped history. Okay, so when black holes collide, it causes some of, if not the most powerful and unique reactions that occur in the entire universe. And these reactions reverberate for like light years across multiple galaxies. Realize that these colliding black holes used to be massive suns at one time. Black holes, they eat during their lifetimes. You know, they eat anything in their path. And when they eat, this increases their size and mass. So it only makes them even more devastating the bigger they get. You can only imagine the mayhem two of them meeting would cause. When two black holes are destined to collide, what's going to happen is one is going to eat the other. When the dust settles, what results is one giant black hole. Now that this one black hole has swallowed up its neighbor, it has increased its size and mass, therefore increasing its potential destructive capability. A black hole will eat anything in its path, and there is nothing that can stop it. It will eat suns, it will eat moons, it will eat planets, anything. The more it increases in size and mass, the more its destructive capabilities, which leads me to my next point. They come in different sizes. So black holes are categorized by size, and their size has to do with their mass. Some black holes are merely, if you want to use the word merely, tens of times the mass of our own sun. They are considered small or of normal size. But some black holes are millions of times the mass of our sun. I hope you can calculate in your brain the words millions of times the mass of our sun. And these black holes, called supermassive black holes, can have a diameter the size of our entire solar system.
Supermassive black holes are colossal gravitational entities that reside at the centers of most galaxies, including our own Milky Way, typically ranging from millions to billions of times the mass of the sun.
Okay, so now that we've gone over some basic fundamentals, let's drill down just a little deeper and look at a few characteristics of black holes.
A black hole isn't just a void, it has three main parts: the singularity at its core, where gravity is infinite, the event horizon, the point of no return, and the accretion disk.
Black holes have only three physical characteristics, and they consist of three parts. Their three characteristics are their mass, the electrical charge they give off or the radiation they give off, and the direction in which they are moving. Now I want to talk about their three parts. They are the actual whole, which is called the singularity. This is where all of or most of the mass of the black hole is contained. Everything occurring outside the singularity or the actual black hole is the result of what's going on inside of the singularity itself. The accretion disk is the bright energy field. It's the light show occurring around the singularity. And it is one of the main reasons you're able to see a black hole or know it's there. Finally, the border area between the singularity and the accretion disk is called the event horizon. This imaginary line or imaginary area marks the extent of the direct influence of the singularity. It is the boundary line marking the reach of the singularity's gravitational pull. Okay, so let's break this all down, starting with the singularity or the black hole itself. I don't want you to think of black holes as like literal holes in space, though I suppose it could look that way depending on what angle you were viewing it from. Like if you were coming at it head on, approaching it head on, it would probably give you the impression that it was literally a hole in space. That's what it would look like. But it's not. It actually is more like a sphere or a bubble.
4 million times the mass of our sun.
Black holes are multi-dimensional. They have a front and back, or rather a top and bottom. It's not a solid physical object, but more of an area of influence. We don't even fully understand what goes on inside black holes or where exactly they lead to, which leads to other theories such as maybe there's a such thing as white holes. But if you were to draw a line around a singularity, meaning around the area of its gravitational pull, then it would take on a spherical shape, much like the one you see in this slide that I've provided for you. The singularity is where the action is. It's where the mystery is. It's where the mass is. These things, like I said before, eat planets. They eat suns, they eat moons, they eat other black holes, and the singularity is where it all goes down. Next, let's talk about the event horizon. Okay, before we do, I want to take another look at this slide. So you see everything is like labeled here. I think this is a good slide. So it just points, I just want to point out, all these physical characteristics of the black hole, because I'm not going to talk about them all in this episode. So you got the singularity here. If you can see my arrow, you got the singularity, and in the slide it's pointed out for you. It's pointing directly to the actual proverbial black hole. You have the accretion disk, which spins around the singularity, and you have the event horizon. Now the event horizon, which is what I want to talk about right now, it's called the point of no return. It's this boundary line that if you cross it, you are going in that hole. Now, right here, you see this says the relativistic jet. I'm not going to talk about this in this episode, but I am going to talk about this in a couple episodes because it's just as important as anything else. So we're talking about the event horizon. The event horizon is simply the furthest extent of the singularity's direct gravitational influence. It is said, and it is well known and agreed upon by experts in the many various disciplines regarding the study of space, that the event horizon is the proverbial point of no return, Once you cross this threshold, there is no escaping the gravitational pull of the singularity. That's why it's called the point of no return. Okay, now let's talk about the last part of the black hole and my favorite part, the accretion disk. And I saved this one for last on purpose for a good reason. The accretion disk is the massive swirling light show that orbits the singularity. And in most cases, when it lights up, that's how you're going to know that there's a black hole there.
We embark on an exciting journey to explore the enigmatic phenomenon known as accretion disks. To begin our exploration, let's first understand what accretion disks are.
Okay, so just for fun and understanding, let's make believe that we're in a sophisticated, invulnerable type of spacesuit, and we're at a far enough distance and we're heading straight for a black hole.
You are, of course, traveling into a black hole.
Okay, so we're pretending here for a moment, okay? We're heading for a black hole, but we're at a safe distance, okay? So we're safely traveling towards a black hole. And the first thing that you're gonna notice is its accretion disk. Now, the prominence of this accretion disk is going to be contingent upon the feeding habits of the singularity, meaning if the singularity is not that active, if it hasn't been feeding, the accretion disk is probably going to be dull and pretty dormant. If the singularity is very active, then that accretion disk is going to be lit up like a Christmas tree. Okay, so let's assume that this black hole that we're traveling towards is actively feeding or just recently has fed, and that the accretion disk is in full charge mode like a gigantic Energizer battery or what have you. And let me tell you, it would be truly the most fascinating sight your mortal eyes have ever witnessed. Trust me on that. This would be one for the history books. Truly, you would be the envy of all men. At some point, you would get close enough to this thing that you would see it for what it truly was. And all of a sudden, it wouldn't look so pretty anymore. And it would be at this time, Dorothy would know that she was no longer in Kansas. It would be during this time, as the euphoria began to dissipate and the horror began to set in, that you would begin to realize and regret the grave error you made in coming to this place. Now would be a good time to turn on whatever emergency boosters or thrusters that advanced spacesuit. Now would be a time to turn on whatever emergency apparatuses that it came with. Hell, start flapping your arms like a bird. Anything to keep from crossing that event horizon. But you need not worry about that event horizon. One look at the accretion disk on this black hole will assure you that you will not make it to the event horizon. You see it now. All the pretty has left. You see now that there is no escape, and there is no spacesuit designed by man or the gods that would survive the mayhem in front of you. This accretion disk, though it was beautiful and glorious from a distance, you now up close, you now see this swirling mass of heat, plasma, smoke, dust, and debris crashing and colliding, storming and folding over itself in abject confusion, as if it was some sort of cosmic sea of chaos. Now, did you catch that? Did you catch what I said? I said like a sea of chaos. By the way, folks, remember I said earlier, if you were coming at this thing head on, it would literally look like a hole. Folks, remember how I said, depending on how you were approaching the black hole, it may actually look like a hole, like if you were coming right at it or right on top of it. It probably would look like an actual hole in space. But if you were viewing a black hole at a certain angle, like from the side, this thing would look like hell. It would look like some dark monstrosity emerging from an ocean of fire. It would look like some dark, black, soulless planet. It would look like the freakiest, most horrifying sight you've ever seen. So depending on what angle you were coming at it from would shape your perception of it. But from a certain angle, folks, this thing would look like a black monstrosity, like a black Death Star emerging from fire. You would think of God. You would think of spiritual things if you saw that. It would be more frightening than any ghost story or scary movie that we could ever imagine. Moses starts the creation story by stating, in the beginning, there was darkness, the face of the deep. He says, this is how it all started. And if you remember, folks, this is before the earth was created. This what we're talking about occurs on day 1. The earth isn't created till day 3. Go back and check your Bible, research me, comment and tell me, let me know if I'm wrong. But the earth has not been created. So you can't think of earthly things when it says darkness and the deep and a sea of chaos. We're not talking about earthly terrestrial things. None of that's been created. Moses starts the creation story by stating that in the beginning, these things were already in existence. He states that there was darkness on the face of the deep. And that's how it all started. Well, folks, you can't get much darker and deeper than the abyss, which is a black hole. Moses also says, and the Spirit of the Lord moved upon the face of the waters. Ladies and gentlemen, I propose to you that this is what the Babylonians call the noon. This is what the Egyptians call the Sea of Chaos. They are one and the same. The first verse of Genesis describes a black hole. Folks, one last thing before I go. Hey, Ma, how am I doing? I'm going to be looking for you to comment to let me know if I did, in fact, accomplish my goal of explaining the beginning of the Bible in a way that no one else has ever explained it before. I propose that I am the only person that you have ever heard say that the beginning of Genesis is describing a black hole. But hey, Ma, I'll be looking for you to comment and let me know the ball is in your court.